Do you think we are starting to see a real slowdown in the jobs market?
Yeah, I think the jobs numbers were slower than we expected. I think that one of the explanations for revisions is they have more complete data. And so I think it is likely that the revisions are a better read of the data if the data are not being manipulated. And so, yeah, I would say that it's a little bit weaker.
So one of the main things that people like me were trying to warn about before the 2024 election were all of these authoritarian tendencies coming from Donald Trump. And I think when most people think about authoritarians, they often think about these so-called big ticket items, like going after the free press, going after your perceived enemies, and maybe even weaponizing the rule of law. But then there are also these little things that are still very significant that many people may not think about, like going after science, like going after math, like going after statistics, because the authoritarian doesn't want his version of reality to be checked in any way. And so when you have these types of people who deal in the realm of factual reality, the authoritarian can view these people as some sort of threat. And so while we do have Donald Trump engaging in these big ticket items, like having Democratic lawmakers arrested, deploying the military to the streets of LA, we are also seeing these other little, still significant things that he is also trying to do. Because on the back of a very bad jobs report late last week, Donald Trump decided it would be a good idea to fire the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner. This is the person who kind of helps collate the data and put together the jobs reports. And because this particular jobs report didn't make Donald Trump look particularly good, he decided he wanted to shoot the messenger instead of dealing with the factual reality that was on the ground. So in the wake of all this, we now have Trump bootlickers making their rounds on the Sunday shows, trying to normalize what Donald Trump is doing here. So here's Kevin Hassett, and he's being asked whether there is any evidence at all that this jobs report was rigged in any way. If you guys do appreciate my work, please do remember to subscribe.
But just to be very clear, does the administration have any evidence that it was rigged, as the president said? And will you be presenting that to the American public?
Well, the evidence is that there have been a bunch of revisions that could appear to partisans. Oh, I mean, the revisions are hard evidence. There, for example, there was a 818,000 revision making the Joe Biden job record a lot worse that came out after he withdrew from the presidential campaign. There have been a bunch of patterns that could make people wonder. And I think the most important thing for people to know is that it's the president's highest priority that the data be trusted and that people get to the bottom of why these revisions are so unreliable.
So he's asked whether or not there is any evidence at all to suggest that anybody manipulated this data to make Donald Trump look bad. And he said, oh, yeah, of course we have evidence, guys. The evidence is that the revisions exist. I mean, are you kidding me? These are unserious people. And if you're so concerned about getting the proper data, the factual reality on the ground, and you have no evidence to show that these numbers were actually manipulated, then why did you fire the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner? It all makes no sense. And then he tries to peddle this other lie that somehow this commissioner tried to make Kamala Harris and Joe Biden look good by doing the revision after the election instead of before. But that is not even true either. The revision came before the 2024 election. So if anything, this revision down of 800 and some thousand jobs over the course of a whole year, that would work against Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. So everything that he is saying here is just wrong. So then he is questioned about whether or not Donald Trump intends to fire everybody that works on these numbers. And she does it in the context of this letter from one of the former commissioners of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, where they kind of point out that, hey, the commissioner doesn't write the report all by themselves. Like, they don't even have an opportunity to manipulate this data. So what exactly is going on here?
The commissioner doesn't have any hand or any influence or any way of even knowing the data until they're completely done. Isn't this the very definition of shooting the messenger?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the bottom line is that there were people involved in creating these numbers. And if I were running the BLS and I had a number that was a huge politically important revision, the biggest since 1968, actually revisions should be smaller, right, because computers are better and so on, then I would have a really long report explaining exactly what happened. And we didn't get that. We didn't get that. And so right now, people, Goldman Sachs, people on Wall Street are wondering, where did these revisions come from and why do they keep happening? And what we need is a fresh set of eyes over at the BLS. And there are great career staffers. One of the top BLS staffers is actually working in the White House to help us understand the jobs numbers. When I saw the jobs revisions, I literally called up that person and said, I think there's a typo. Because I've been following these numbers all the way back when I worked with Alan Greenspan for something like 40 years, and I've never seen revisions like this.
But just to be very clear, I mean, there are 40 people put these numbers together. Is the president planning to fire all 40 people involved in putting these numbers together?
We're going to try to get the numbers so that they're transparent and reliable.
So what he is saying here is that, well, we got these jobs numbers. Mind you, they came on the 1st or 2nd of August. And he said, well, because we didn't get a report along with those numbers to tell us why these revisions occurred, then we can't trust the numbers. Except, like she just said, like the previous commissioner had said, the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner, they don't have the opportunity to go in and manipulate this data. And his premise doesn't even make sense in the first place. If they wanted to hurt Donald Trump, why wouldn't they be manipulating this data going back to the beginning of his presidency, where they could make it look like he was losing thousands of jobs every month to make Donald Trump look bad? It all makes no sense. They know that Donald Trump is injecting all of this uncertainty into our markets and that our economy is, in fact, probably slowing down. But instead of contending with that, they got to come up with all of this fiction to try to sell to the American people. And he's trying to say that, oh, well, the revisions exist and we should have a report. You guys are providing no evidence that these numbers were tampered with at all. These people are losers. Donald Trump should be electorally punished in the midterms. And I'm just so sick and tired of these bootlickers covering up every little thing that Donald Trump does. This is what authoritarians do, guys. They shoot the messenger. Donald Trump said or feels that this jobs report makes him look bad. And instead of dealing with the things that he's actually doing to the economy, he wants to take it out on these people that don't have any real sway over what this data actually looks like. It is a damn shame that this is happening in the United States of America. So then he is asked about, well, what about when Donald Trump liked the numbers coming from the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
President Trump himself was happy to accept the jobs numbers issued under McIntyre's leadership when the numbers were good. Take a listen to what he said in the past.
The numbers were much better, as you know, than projected by the media.
In 3 months, we have created 350,000 jobs. Think of that.
A lot of jobs are being created. That's what happened this morning. We saw the jobs.
So is the president prepared to fire anyone who reports data that he disagrees with?
No, absolutely not. The president wants his own people there so that when we see the numbers, they're more transparent and more reliable. And if there are big changes and big revisions, we expect more big revisions for the jobs data in September, for example, then we want to know why. We want people to explain it to us.
And what he said there is kind of the whole ball game. Donald Trump wants his own people in all of these positions because Donald Trump wants to be able to go to that person and put his thumb on the scale. He wants to be able to manipulate reality to be in alignment with his conspiratorial worldview of his own presidency. This is what authoritarians do. They want to warp your version of reality so you don't hold them accountable. They want to get rid of anybody who might be a hard check on the reality that they are trying to push. And I think it's really interesting that Kevin Hassett, on the one hand, tries to say that, well, these revisions shouldn't be happening because we have better data these days. But then he says here, well, we're expecting even more revisions in September. He's trying to have it both ways. These are unserious people. So then he's asked one more time, is there any hard evidence that these numbers were tampered with?
Bottom line, were the numbers wrong? Do you have any hard evidence that you can present to the American public that these numbers, these revisions that were reported, and there were plenty of revisions under former President Biden, including right before the election, do you have any hard evidence that these numbers were wrong?
Yeah, is very hard evidence that we're looking at the biggest revision since 1968.
Are you going to present
if
that
you look
evidence?
at the number itself, it is the evidence.
But just saying it's
So when asked if he's got any evidence, he said the evidence is that the revision even occurred all on its own. That doesn't make any sense. When he's asked if he's going to present any evidence to the American people, he says no. So the whole premise here is that the labor market is actually stronger than what this jobs report said it was, right? That is the version of reality that they want you to buy. So you've got Kevin Hassett out here saying that these revisions shouldn't have occurred. If they did occur, we should have lengthy reports to tell us why these things happened. But then on the other hand, says he's expecting new revisions in September. It just doesn't make any sense, guys. So then he's asked, Donald Trump's been in office now for 6 months. Can we now say that this is Donald Trump's economy?
all right. Before I let you go, President Trump has now been in office for more than 6 months. Is this now the Trump economy?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a lot of policy yet to happen. We've just passed the big, beautiful bill. It's going into effect in July, and it's going to have a massive impact on the economy. There are residual problems that we've inherited in part the runaway spending from the previous term. And so whose economy is it is more of a political question than an economist
Well,
question.
but you just touted all the benefits that you see at this
with
point.
the eye on the horizon.
Does the president own the economy at this point? He's been in office for 6 months.
With the eye on the horizon, the economic outlook is huge. It's great. We've got the big, beautiful bill. We've got AI increasing productivity. We've got everything, and we've got all the tariff revenue coming in. So we have every confidence that the economy is headed way, way up from here.
So when asked if we can just attribute this economy as it stands to Donald Trump, what does Kevin Hassett do? Well, not really. We still inherited all these things from the previous administration, but we got all these good things like the big despicable bill and the tariff revenue. We'll take credit for those because we view those as good, but then we want to pass the buck for everything that people might consider bad. This is what the Trump administration does. Donald Trump even came out in an interview and said this exact thing. I'll take credit for the good parts, but I'm going to pass blame for the bad parts. So just to recap, everybody, we got a very bad jobs report. It missed, the top line was, I think, 73,000 jobs. The expectation was 100,000 jobs. That wasn't the bad part. The bad part was the revision from the past 2 months that was revised down by 258,000 jobs. And this is kind of in alignment with what economists have been expecting. Everybody's kind of wondering, well, you've got Donald Trump doing all of these insane things. He's injecting all of this uncertainty into the market. Why hasn't that been reflected in our job market? So this is kind of what economists have been expecting, and now the numbers are actually starting to live up to those expectations. And so you've got Kevin Hassett out there trying to say that this was a rigged jobs report, that these revisions shouldn't happen because we have better data these days. But then check what he did. Check out what he did the very next day. Here he is saying the exact opposite thing that we just listened to.
The markets seem to believe the revisions in the numbers more than they believe the original numbers. That's why you saw bond yields tumble on Friday. Are you in agreement with that? Do you think we are starting to see a real slowdown in the jobs market?
Yeah, I think the jobs numbers were slower than we expected. I think that one of the explanations for revisions is they have more complete data. And so I think it is likely that the revisions are a better read of the data if the data are not being manipulated. And so, yeah, I would say that it's a little bit weaker, but don't.
What? You're now saying that the job market is in fact slowing down? You're saying that, oh, these revisions probably happened because we had more data. Well, no shit, Sherlock. When we get more data as time goes on, we are able to better craft these reports to be more accurate. That makes sense. No, here you got Kevin Hassett admitting that, yeah, the jobs numbers didn't look as good as we thought they were going to look. Maybe the job market is slowing down a little bit, kind of like economists were predicting. But we fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner because this jobs report wasn't touting Donald Trump in the light that he wanted to be touted. These people are unserious people. This is what authoritarians do. They are trying to sell you a version of reality oftentimes that doesn't exist. They want to be able to put their thumb on the scale of every single data point that comes out of this administration, that comes out of this economy, that comes out of anywhere. And so now you've got Donald Trump, who is injecting all this uncertainty into the markets. He is doing these unilateral tariffs after giving himself emergency powers. He's wrecking pretty much everything. And now that the data is starting to reflect that, he is shooting the messenger to try to craft an alternative reality so people don't hold him accountable. That is what is actually going on here, guys. And I cannot stress to you enough just how important it is that we have data that we can trust. Investors invest in companies in our country because they can count on the data. Now that Donald Trump has fired that person, and now we know we cannot trust the person that he's going to put in there to not be manipulated by Donald Trump, this is very, very bad news for our country. This is a self-inflicted wound that did not need to happen. It is so important that these types of numbers are not manipulated in a partisan way, manipulated at all. Having these accurate representations of what's going on in the economy is so important for a vast array of reasons. And Donald Trump is shooting us all in the foot by trying to put his finger on the scale here. So we will definitely be keeping an eye on it. This is Donald Trump in his authoritarian ways, trying to put his thumb on the scale once again. He's trying to shoot the messenger because these facts don't align with his mythical version of reality. And the American people are going to suffer because of this. I just don't think that we're going to be able to trust the data that is coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And these are the types, this agency, I believe, also does inflation data, which we also know is ticking up in this time of uncertainty, in this time of tariffs. And we're supposed to trust that Donald Trump is going to put somebody in here who can do the job competently and without pressure from the executive? Man, I would not make that bet. So I will leave it there for now, guys. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. We are trying to build something here on the left that pushes back against this right-wing media ecosystem that just launders all of these mythical narratives for Donald Trump day in and day out. So if you do like what I do here, please remember to smash that subscribe button. Of course, that is no cost to you. If you want to go a step beyond that, we have launched a Substack at politiscape.substack.com. If you want to join me and help produce these videos, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you don't want to jump off to a new platform, we have opened up memberships right here on YouTube, and you can subscribe for as little as $3 a month. And as I will continue to say, guys, fighting back against this MAGA media machine has got to be a team effort. So I'll see you guys on the next one.